Thank you and welcome. Seeing that this partially meeting is being remote and we have one of our council members on Zoom tonight, I'm going to ask Clerk Murtaugh to please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Here.
Councilmember Fulch?
Here.
Councilmember Fox?
Here.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Here.
Councilmember Lund? Councilmember Vaughn?
Here.
Mayor Fassbender?
Here. And a quorum has been established with the absence of Councilmember London. He will be coming, just will be late. So tonight we do have a proclamation supporting Hastings Family Service. So Kelly, if you would join me at the Diaz, or at the microphone, thank you.
Whereas Minnesota FoodShare has coordinated a March campaign for 41 years to restock food shelves throughout the state of Minnesota, and
Whereas 3.7 million visits were made to food shelves during 2021 in Minnesota, and
Whereas Hastings Family Service serves up to 135 families each week through many different food programs, and whereas 50% of those served by the market food shelf at Hastings Family Service are children, and
Whereas the generosity of our community makes it possible for the Hastings Family Service to provide help and hope to our neighbors who need assistance with food, housing, clothing, or transportation, and
Whereas all gifts of money and food throughout the month of March are appropriated, matched by Minnesota FoodShare. Therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Mary Fassbender of the City of Hastings, do hereby declare together with the Hastings community will drive out hunger during Minnesota FoodShare Month to restock the market food shelf at Hastings Family Service. Tonight we have with us Kelly Carter, who is here with Hastings Family Service. And Kelly, I would like to present you with the proclamation and just say we appreciate Hastings Family Service so much for what it does in our community, and we know that more and more every day that people need your assistance, so we appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you. Our goal is to make Minnesota FoodShare this year one of the best that it's been, in dedication to the retirement of our food shelf director, Mary Kochek. Cost of food is skyrocketing and the need is still strong, so community support is needed more than ever. And we thank you for this proclamation, and we thank you for your continued support. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes of the workshop and regular meeting of January 18th? Seeing none, they are approved. Comments from the audience. For public comments, we have options for comments to be mailed in prior to the meeting, as well as interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the City Council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda tonight will not be discussed this evening. For live comments, there may be either through Zoom link or in person. We ask that attendees either raise their hand in person or use the raised hand feature in Zoom, and they will be invited to speak one at a time. Is there anyone who would like to address the council at this time? No one in the audience? No one on Zoom? Okay. Council members, are there any items to be considered? Okay, and consent agenda. Council, I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda. Councilmember Liefeld, Councilmember Vaughn, second. Discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
yes.
Councilmember Fox?
yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes?
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight, we have a public hearing for the establishment of TIF District Number 9, the NJS development, the Stencil Flats on Third. And tonight with us, we have John Hinsman, Development Coordinator. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to put my presentation back up here. Mayor, we've got a couple of actions before you tonight, one of which is a public hearing. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, then we have Jessica Green from Northland Securities. They're our financial consultant for the city in Hedra. Jess is an expert at what I am going to be going over briefly here, and be able to answer any questions that you may have. So we're looking at a public hearing tonight to consider a couple of actions related to Tax Increment Finance District Number 9. First of all, I just want to go through a quick recap here of tax increment financing. What is it? It's local property tax revenue generated by a new development. It's captured from specific parcels, used to facilitate private development that achieves a public purpose that wouldn't occur without TIF, and according to state law. This is from Professor Fifield, if you put this together a couple of years ago. TIF can be a little bit confusing. TIF is involved a but-for test in which development would not occur but for the use of TIF. And I'll go through a little bit of specifics of what's involved within it. Before TIF, this is what we have. We've got the land, we've got the property taxes that occur, that are paid out to city, county, school district, and others. Those still get paid out after TIF. What happens with TIF is this: something is built, new property taxes are generated on the site, which is called the increment. The base value taxes, as you can see on the bottom here, to the city, county, and school district at their pre-development level still get paid. The property taxes that are generated from the development, this increment between present property value taxes and former property value taxes, that is used to help develop the district itself. That is the key to what tax increment financing would be. There's a number of different methodologies and reasons why we do it, but that is the general of it. What we're looking at tonight is this. We're looking at doing a development district amendment project area. I'll go over to this. Development districts are kind of the area in which TIF districts can be created. When we're looking at a development district, we're looking at where future TIF districts can occur. These are based upon plans that we have done. We've had this District 1 here since, I think, the 1970s. That was based upon earlier plans we did within the downtown, and most recently the Heart of Hastings plan we did about 20 years ago now. The black line here represents where the district will be as proposed. The red line are the additions to it. Essentially, it goes west to Spring Street by Hudson and down to 5th Street, east to the railroad tracks. There's areas here in red or where it kind of jumps back up and down between 4th and 5th Street. Our proposal is to include those in. This includes the area in which we are presently redeveloping, which is Block 28, where we're purchasing property, as well as some properties directly across the street there, and then other areas to the east here that may occur in the future. It also includes an area up here, which is the wastewater treatment plant. Now, with the development district, this is not a TIF district. This is where TIF districts can be created in the future. We're not committed to anything here other than the possibility that this is where they can be created. So that is one amendment we're looking at tonight. Whoops, wrong keyboard. And then we have our TIF district itself. TIF district itself looks like this. TIF district is created within the development area itself. The TIF district involves what we commonly refer to as the UBC site, which is down here between 3rd and 4th Street, as well as the Red Rock Corridor the parking lot area between 2nd and 3rd Street, and then jumping north here to Art Space property, and then the land that we own north of Art Space is Hedra, north to the river. Now, this is the TIF district that would be created with. When we look at the TIF district, we're authorizing the location and the use of TIF here. We're also having a TIF plan, which is within your packets, that sets the parameters and estimated TIF generation. What we're looking at here is the pre-development value of this property and what post-development might be. The TIF district, and in this case, can be larger than a development site. We may have a specific site that is ripe for development right now. The TIF district may be larger than that. It accommodates areas that we see are in close proximity from a time frame for development there, and where TIF might be able to be used in the future via a TIF agreement. The TIF agreement is an important thing. The TIF agreement is when we're going to allocate specific amounts of TIF for a certain project. That is not what we're doing tonight. What we're doing tonight is creating the TIF district and adopting the TIF plan. What would happen is we would negotiate with a specific developer, and in this case, Stencil Development, to determine what specifically is needed for his development and how much of that TIF that we would pledge back to him. By pledging, what we mean is the full taxes would be paid on the property, and then the increment between the pre-development value and the post-development value would be rebated back to the developer for a specific period of time. That is an agreement that will come before you in the future. So we'll be creating a TIF district tonight, but the actual allocation of that to any particular developer would come at a different point. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of TIF generation. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Green here, who can talk a little bit more about the proposal that we're looking at here for Stencil Development. And let me see if I can get it in the right place here. And there she is. Can you hear me, Jessica?
I can. Can everyone hear me? Nodding? Yes, great. Well, good evening, everyone, Mayor, Council. Thank you, John, for that introduction. I think those are all really great comments as we're kind of working towards getting through this public hearing tonight. As John mentioned, you do have a TIF plan that's in front of you or in your packet. You also have a resolution to consider after the close of the public hearing. And then also included in your packet tonight is a memo that Northland has prepared as sort of a high-level overview of the district itself, the proposed project, and then sort of a guide through that TIF plan, because it can get somewhat complex and just generally quite long. So if it's okay with Mayor, Council, what I would plan to do is really just start with that TIF overview, kind of walk through some of the development specifics, and then of course open it up for questions and then the public hearing. Does that sound okay? See some nodding, so we'll go forward. And the other thing that I want to mention, I really appreciate everyone allowing me to join you remotely tonight, given the weather. It's nice to be able to dial in rather than get on the road. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so getting into this overview memo, first and foremost, it should be mentioned that the TIF plan was reviewed by HEDRA at their meeting on February 10th. And that also HEDRA did take action on a resolution providing for the establishment of the district for tax increment financing district number 9. That resolution, of course, is subject to council consideration this evening. In terms of the proposed development and sort of the impetus for the creation of this district and the modification of the project area for this project, the city received an application from NJS Development, LLC. And what NJS is looking to do is to construct an 89-unit apartment facility at approximately 404 3rd Street East. Now, that property address may not be the actual address of the apartment project once it's completed, being that this is a redevelopment site and we are anticipating some clearance of buildings, some lot combinations. That address may change, but it's included here for some context in terms of the location. Now, the project itself includes a mix of units. So we've got studios, we've got 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. Additionally, the developer has stated that they are planning for some amenities here. So a dog park, sky lounge, some fitness facilities, and then also looking at doing some enclosed parking to allow for the density of these 89 units on this particular site. The request to the city was for the full duration of the TIF district, what's allowed by law, so 25 years. We will say that, as John mentioned, we are not looking to the council to determine what that level of support is at this time or what the term is. Really just working through the mechanics of establishing that district so that we're creating the authority to use TIF. that TIF and what is provided to the developer, assuming of course that the council is supportive of establishing the district, would be determined at a later date. We would be hoping to have a development agreement back before the city in March. If agreeable terms can be met between the city and the developer, may stretch into April, but we'll certainly try to get that moving forward as soon as possible. Now, in terms of the review, so Northland, of course, has the application that was received, the financial information in terms of the project pro forma. We've reviewed the construction cost estimates. And based on our review, we do find that the assumptions for revenues and expenditures are found to be reasonable and within general industry standards. Now, as we kind of dig further into the layers of that pro forma, we do look at different metrics in terms of debt service coverage and return for the project. And it is our opinion that but for the TIF assistance, that the project would not move forward as proposed. And furthermore, in the application itself, and then from conversations that have been ongoing with the developer, they continue to maintain that without the project assistance, the TIF assistance, that they will not be able to move forward with the project. So in terms of the but-for test that John mentioned, we are comfortable, and again, it is our opinion that the project would not move forward but for TIF assistance. Again, that level needs to be determined based on those ongoing conversations between Northland, the developer, the city, but we are working through that process as we go along here. Going on to the second page of that TIF memo, really what we're trying to sort of drive home here is that the need for the assistance comes from, one, the cost of the redevelopment of the site. Again, there's lot combinations here, there's some clearance of buildings, but it also comes from the construction of that enclosed parking. So essentially that building has to go up so that there's density allowed here for that site, for those 89 units that are proposed. In terms of process, with any TIF district, what you'd be looking at doing is, of course, the city would need to hold a public hearing. That's one of the reasons that we're here tonight, of course. Assuming that the city council is supportive of the establishment of the district, following the close of the hearing, a resolution would be considered for that establishment. It is proposed that HEDRA would act as the authority for the district. HEDRA has acted as the authority for administering the district for other previously approved TIF districts, so we're assuming that that would be the case here as well. With all new TIF districts, there's a certain level of notification that has to occur. So notifications were sent out to the school district and the county. And with redevelopment and housing districts, there's another level of notification that needs to occur specifically to the county commissioner that represents that area. All of those notifications were sent out here in early January. And with those notifications, we do request that written comments are received so that it can be entered into the record for the public hearing. Unless staff is aware of comments that have been received by the city, Northland has not received any comments to date, not from the school district, the county commissioner, or from members of the public at this point. Following the adoption of the plan, following the hearing, the city may consider a resolution establishing the district and modifying that project area, and then the adoption of the TIF plan as well. So sort of the second piece of this overview, again, provides that roadmap through the TIF district itself. I believe our TIF plan is roughly 30 pages or so. So this is kind of a nice synopsis of what's included there. The first three sections, 1, 2, and 3, relate to that project area. So that's the area that John was mentioning related to Development District Number 1. Development District Number 1 was established back in 1974, and there have been a number of modifications to that district over time, and those modifications are included in your plan. One of the things that we're attempting to do here, aside from modifying the boundaries of that district, is we're also looking to restate the development plan for the area. Reason being is that throughout time, again, going back numerous years here and numerous modifications. The development district has been referred to as development district number 1, but it's also been referred to as the Hastings downtown redevelopment area. So by restating it and sort of titling it just as development district number 1, it just sort of cleans that up a little bit. And then the other piece here is that we are looking to combine the plan for the project area and development district number 1 into the TIF plan as well. This is more of a housekeeping item and just allows for just some easier record keeping for staff, essentially by including those in terms of one specific plan. Going further into that TIF plan, you've got the boundaries of the TIF district and the type of district starting out in section 4. TIF district number 9 is proposed to consist of 10 parcels. Now, as John had mentioned previously, the district can be larger than just the proposed project that's in front of the city at this point. And that's what we've elected to do here in consulting with staff, being that these 10 parcels would qualify as a redevelopment district at this time and allow for HEDRA to maintain and move forward with other redevelopment activities within the area. Section 4.04 gets into the actual TIF revenue flow, and that can be found on page, I believe it's 18 of the TIF plan. And the figures that are referenced there come from the estimates based on what we would imagine the resulting market value to be following the completion of construction. So with those 10 parcels in mind, and assuming that the project is built, what we've assumed is that in the first year of the district, where the district is producing increment, is that we would start out with an estimated market value of approximately $25.1 million. Based on that, and of course, taking out any of the tax capacity related to the base value that exists today, we would anticipate that that initial increment would be around $218,000. That's after deducting the state fee. And then it would obviously go on from there. We've assumed a bit of an inflationary factor within the plan, conservative at 1%. That just means that that estimated market value will grow over time, and the TIF revenue would grow as well. A note here within the overview, of course, is that the amounts that are listed in the TIF plan are estimates at this point. The actual market value based on the assessor's review of the project following the completion of construction, along with tax rates at the time of certification, et cetera, will impact those estimates. But based on the information that we have today, that is what is included in the plan. And then project costs, sources and uses, et cetera, can be found further into section 4. It's 4.04.2 through 4.04.4. And really what this is getting to is that the TIF plan authorizes the use of increment up to $3,926,000 to cover eligible project costs, including those administrative costs that may be incurred by HEDRA. So currently, project costs of $3,851,000, and that allows for around $75,000 in administrative costs due to TIF reporting, et cetera. Final two things here on the overview memo is that we've got a section here related to bonded indebtedness. We like to highlight this just being that oftentimes we'll have people reviewing the plan and think that perhaps the city is contemplating issuing bonds to support the project. And that is not the case here. That has not been discussed in any sense at all for this project. Bonded indebtedness for the purposes of state statute related to TIF is related to any type of obligation that would be paid through that TIF stream. And in this case, what's being considered, assuming again that the council is supportive of establishing a district and that a development agreement can be reached, that the developer would be paid 90% of the available TIF revenue based on eligible project costs on a pay-as-you-go basis. So as those property taxes are paid, that increment is collected within the district, that essentially that would be reimbursed to the developer, again, on a pay-as-you-go basis. So not anticipating any sort of general obligation bonds being issued by the city. And then final point here is that the plan has been drafted to allow for the maximum duration. Now, when you read through state statute, it talks about redevelopment districts allowed for up to 25 years. Technically, what it allows for is 25 years from the receipt of the first increment. So technically you get 26 years in total. We have drafted the plan for that maximum duration. That being said, based on our review of the project pro forma, we do anticipate that this particular project would be supported at a lower term than that. Now, we've again drafted this plan with the maximum to allow for HEDRA to work on development activities or support other development projects that may come forward in the future. So that brings us to the end of the overview memo. Like I said, I won't go through the TIF plan in itself just as it is quite lengthy, but I am certainly happy to stand for any questions that the council may have or answer any questions that may come from the community as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Mayor, at this time, we've got two actions before you. We've got the public hearing that you may open at any time, and then we've got the action, which is the resolution within your packet itself.
Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and if there is any attendees on Zoom, please use the raised hand feature. Okay. And no one in the audience, so one more time, no one wishing to speak during the public hearing on Zoom, please use the raised hand feature. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this time and open the discussion for council. Council discussion. Councilmember Brox.
My question is about the TIF district application to a piece of property. Does the TIF run with the land? So my question is really, if a developer builds on a property and then later sells that property, because it's in the TIF district, does it apply to the land in the building? It doesn't go with the developer, so it's applying to the land specifically, correct?
Sure. And Jessica, I'm assuming that runs with the land, but I'm looking at the expert here.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. So the development agreement would be with the developer. So oftentimes when we see a project being sold where TIF is related to that specific property, that's going to be worked out in that sale process. So what the city and the developer would need to agree to, if the developer were going to sell the property with that TIF revenue stream associated with it, is that both parties would need to agree to an assignment of that TIF. Because as it relates to the initial development agreement, it is between the city and that developer. So it's not specific to that land. It's due to the developer based on that project. But as I mentioned, typically when these types of things happen, there is an assignment of that TIF stream, and the city would need to agree to that.
So can I follow up question to that? If that's true, then our creation of the TIF district is a separate action. That's what we're doing tonight. And the legal agreement to use TIF is handled in the development agreement, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Any other questions, council? Councilmember Brox.
So under this model, it assumes a certain level of growth of property value and land, and assuming that you're putting a building on a property, it's automatically going to be valued at more. What happens in a market where the market crashes? And although we all hope that doesn't happen, what if it does happen, and then how do we recoup what who covers the loss, basically, in that situation, where there isn't growth? I can't imagine a situation where a 90 apartment building on a piece of land wouldn't be worth more than originally it was with nothing on it. But has that ever happened, and what happens in those situations?
That's a really good question. I have not seen a situation where, in a case like this, where the base value would have gone below kind of what exists today. in the event that the property does not reach sort of the level that we're estimating, what that means is effectively the available increment would be less than what's estimated in the plan. So when we're looking at the plan and we're saying, based on the construction of 89 units and what we would anticipate for the resulting market value, and given the base value that exists today, overall, we're looking at a taxable market value of roughly 25 million. Now, if the project sort of doesn't produce that level of estimated market value, and we're looking at, say, 20 million, overall, that increment is going to be less. That means that the overall the developer is paying less in property taxes and then receiving less on a reimbursement basis. So that's kind of the beauty of these pay-as-you-go arrangements, is that if that increment is not produced in the way that we're estimating, essentially that means the developer is getting less over time. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, that helps, thank you. And I do have one more question, if you would allow me, Mayor. So I've heard it referred to just having a citywide policy as to how TIF is used. I've heard people say things like, well, this city TIFs this and TIFs that, and that's why they have all this development, because they use it like crazy. I know that hasn't been our policy in Hastings historically. And is this something that once we establish it, we can expect more people to ask for? If so, do we need to talk about having a policy around how we use TIF as a council so that we have a guiding principle in the future? Because otherwise, I feel like we're handling these on a case-by-case basis. Is it wise to have a strategy on how you're going to use TIF and how you're going to apply it to the requests that come in for the city of Hastings?
Yeah, Jessica, what have you seen in other cities you've worked for on that?
Sure. So I think it is rather common for TIF to be considered on a case-by-case basis, because each project is going to have different levels of assistance need, whether assistance is needed at all, and different project details. In this case, with the Flats on Third project for NJS, it's the redevelopment costs that are sort of driving the construction costs to be higher than if the developer would have located a site that was already assembled, that had the proper utilities, that didn't require clearance. And then given the sort of constraints of the project as well, in terms of the site and having to raise that building and create that enclosed parking, that's what's driving the need for assistance. And again, kind of keeping in mind the necessary returns to attract investment, and also the debt service coverage that's going to be required by a bank. So to get to your point about, does this sort of create a precedent that TIF is always going to be provided for any type of project? I would say that the answer to that is no. Being that one, staff is reviewing those applications as they come in. They're working with their advisor, Northland, to take a look at that, determine whether or not that level of assistance is necessary. So I do think that it's quite commonplace that, again, you're seeing these on a case-by-case basis. From a policy perspective, we certainly do see communities that if they've identified that they really only want to support housing projects with TIF, perhaps they have a TIF policy related to that. Or if they're only looking to support industrial development, maybe they're only looking at economic development TIF districts. So it really depends on that particular community, what the city is willing to support and incentivize. It really is on a case-by-case basis. And I do think that the city has done a nice job of looking at these projects as they come in for individual levels of assistance if they are needed.
And I could follow up on that a couple points locally here. So what we're looking at tonight is Tax Increment Finance District number 9, which means in the history of TIF, which is about 40 or so years in Hastings, this is the 9th one that we've had within that period. And I believe when I looked at the history, 1 or 2 of those numbers were skipped, so we're actually lower than that. So we haven't used it that much. Some cities do use it more. From a policy standpoint, we don't have anything specific to TIF, but in the use of a public subsidy, HEDRA has adopted certain goals related to when a public subsidy should be considered. And so we could use that potentially as a mechanism for this.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Fulch online.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jessica, I had a quick question about the information that was in our packet, and I'm looking at it's like Exhibit 4 on page 20. There's a detailed table there, and so just to understand what it is that's denoting, it's showing what the city's TIF would be, but then also the county and then the school, and so that all together, those three components, that is what we would be foregoing, and it would 90% of that total then would be possibly going back to the developer for reimbursement, correct? Is that how we're supposed to be reading that table?
Councilmember, could you point me again to which table that you're looking at?
Sure, on page 20, Exhibit 4.
Oh, yes, yep. So what we're looking at here, again, so you're seeing that taxable market value. So that's what we're assuming based on that first year of the district. So looking at approximately $25 million in total valuation. Now, that does include the total valuation for those 10 parcels. So it's not specific to this particular project related to NJS. So based on that, what you'll see is the tax capacity, which is based on, in Minnesota, tax base gets a little bit complicated, but it takes the type of development that is within the district currently, multiplies that by the tax rate for that type of development. So whether it's apartment, commercial, et cetera, it'll be different. But we've got a total tax capacity value there of $313,960. From there, you're going to remove the base tax capacity, so that's what exists today. And then you've got the captured tax capacity for the district. And then, so you're exactly right. So the TIF share that you're seeing there related to the city, the county, the school district. The other is typically related to watershed districts and those types of things. So it would be related to 90% of that is what is proposed to go back to the developer for a certain period of time based on those conversations that are ongoing. But yes, you are right when you're looking through that, that is sort of the TIF portion that would be captured during the life of the district.
Thank you for that clarification. Sometimes those tables get a little overly
Yes.
detailed, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Any other discussion, council? Okay. If none, council, I would accept a motion to approve a resolution approving modifications of Development District Number 1, Hastings Downtown Redevelopment Area, the project area, the establishment of tax increment financing, District Number 9, the TIF district. Within the project area, the adoption of the modified redevelopment plan for the project area and the adoption of tax increment financing plan relating to the TIF district. Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Vaughn. Additional discussion, council? Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. And that motion prevails.
Right. Thank you, council, and thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jessica. We also have a public hearing tonight for the CIP bonds planned for Public Works Facility. For this, we will have our city administrator, Dan Waticha, followed by a public hearing and council action.
Thank you, Mayor. I can briefly introduce this, and I'll turn more of the technical side over to Jessica Green from Northland. At least in the recent past, when we've done bond issues, they typically have had some sort of dedicated revenue stream to them, whether that's a matter of assessments or utility revenues. But this one really would be strictly on the general taxes or general fund dollars, which may be taxes or other sources. Because of that, there's some different procedural aspects to it than what we've seen in the past, such as the hearing we have tonight, and hand that technical side over to Jessica. The project we're anticipating with this is the construction of a new cold storage building, primarily for the Public Works Department, but it'll also service parks and a little bit with the police department. This is on existing city property at the Public Works site, and this really is the result of some other land sales and losing our existing storage and needing to make sure that we do keep expensive equipment properly housed and maintained. The cost of the project, construction, all uses is about $2 million, recognizing that the economy is certainly uncertain these days, whether it's a matter of inflation or supply chain or labor issues. So we're working with a contingency of another $250,000. So what the bond issue is proposing up to the potential full cost of that project at $2.25 million. Recognize we have, from a budgetary standpoint, cash on hand for about $1 million of that. We'll actually potentially issue a lesser amount for the bond, recognizing that there's cash there. But at this point, this sets up the framework so we have some flexibility if potentially that cash might be allocated differently, such as to the City Hall Dome project or something else that may be a need. This gives us the greatest flexibility with this storage building project. The other piece with the storage building is that the bid opening, at least for the construction itself, there's a couple smaller pieces with utilities to serve it, but the bid opening for the construction is next week. So pretty soon here, we'll be able to work with actual dollars rather than these estimates and large contingencies. But with that, I can certainly take any questions. I'd be happy to turn this over to Jessica Green from Northland to give more of a technical side to the bond issue. And as stated earlier, we do have a public hearing this evening for it, and if council so inclined, a resolution to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jessica, anything to add?
Mayor, council, hello again. I would propose that we just simply walk through that capital improvement plan. I think Dan did a great job of sort of highlighting the reason for the public hearing tonight. As was mentioned, the city often is issuing bonds related to street improvement projects or utility projects. When we tend to see these types of projects related to essential service facilities, so public works, public safety, city halls, et cetera, oftentimes the most efficient use of bonding or the lowest cost option here is something called capital improvement plan bonds. And with that, statute requires that the city essentially prepare a 5-year capital improvement plan, hold a public hearing because there is a reverse referendum component that goes along with capital improvement plan bonds. So that's certainly different than the types of bonds that the city issues more regularly. So just very quickly, I'll kind of skim through that plan that is in your packet. So it's a 5-year plan, so it spans from 2022 through 2026. There's a very brief introduction that just references the statutory authority here for borrowing. It's 475.521. Purpose here really describes, again, essential service facilities and the ability to bond for those projects. Got a couple of notes that before the issuance of CIP bonds, the city must hold a public hearing, and that related to the reverse referendum, if a petition is received within 30 days of the close of the hearing, and that petition would need to be signed by at least 5% of those that voted in the last general city election, If the city were to receive a petition such as that, then in order to issue the bonds, you would need to go to an election to seek approval from the voters. Doesn't happen often, but it certainly is something to be aware of. And that's why we're starting this process a little bit earlier on than when the city would typically be issuing bonds, sort of later in the spring or early summer months. Statute requires 8 separate areas are contemplated within that plan: condition of the existing infrastructure, demand for the improvement, et cetera. So those have all been outlined in that plan this evening. The plan summary that's noted here, this is a 5-year plan, but oftentimes when we're dealing with these types of bonds, it's for a specific issuance. We've got this noted under 2022. The plan does allow for you to move that project around. So for example, if the council said, you know what, we're not going to do this project in 22, we'd prefer to hold off until 25. Now, obviously, there's some other things happening where it sounds like this is more of a priority project, but you do have the ability to move that project within any of the years of the plan, and also issue bonds within any year of the plan, assuming that you don't go over that maximum. Now, as Dan mentioned, we have drafted the plan with maximum flexibility here. So estimated costs are currently $2,250,000. That does include that contingency amount. We do anticipate, based on our conversations with staff, that amount that the city would actually bond for would be far less than that $2,250,000. But just to provide, again, flexibility as the council and staff have those continued conversations over the next couple of months about what the right mix is of issuance and then cash contribution. Just going into those 8 areas that are required in the plan, of course, the site that's known as UBC North has been sold for redevelopment purposes. With that in mind, looking at constructing a new public works storage facility. This would allow the Public Works Department and the Parks Department secure storage space for storage of materials, various equipment, et cetera. Touched on, of course, the estimated cost of the project being roughly $2.25 million. Cash reserves here under available public resources, looking at approximately $1 million or so being contributed for the project, which would lower the borrowing amount. But again, you have the authority to go up to that $2.25 million. We've got the overlapping debt, and that just looks at the other taxing jurisdictions and provides you a snapshot of the level of debt that they have outstanding. Under number 6, alternative uses of funds, really what we're looking at here is that the other option for issuance is something called lease revenue bonds. Generally speaking, lease revenue bonds, of course, don't carry the general obligation pledge, so you're going to see higher interest rates. So that's why we're looking at sort of the first option for issuance here being the general obligation capital improvement plan bonds, just being that they are the most sort of cost-efficient way for the city to finance the project at this time. Operating costs of the proposed project are expected to be minimal. There's no heating involved with this project, minimal lighting, et cetera. So while the costs are not known of this new building, of course, not expected to be much greater than what the city is currently dealing with the current site. And then last but not least, the plan has the city looking at whether or not some shared facilities would be an option for the city with other municipalities, given the type of use here, storage, of course, for Public Works and the Parks Department. Locating outside of the city limits would not be feasible for the city, and also would reduce levels of service here. And then a couple of calculations based on state statute and some limitations that we're looking at. Really, in the top part of the page, what's noted here is that in terms of what the city has that is subject to the debt limit, and that does not include any improvement bonds or utility debt. But what this is showing is that the city has the ability to issue up to about $67 million based on your market value in debt that is applicable to the debt limit. Currently outstanding, the city has about $4 million. So lots and lots of room there. And then the other test that we're mindful of is that the maximum principal and interest doesn't exceed roughly $3.5 million on an annual basis. When we are looking at roughly $1 million of issuance for this particular project, we're right at about $115,000. So again, lots and lots of room. That brings us to the end of the plan. Happy to answer any questions. Or of course, the council can open the public hearing prior to consideration of that resolution.
Thank you, Jessica. At this time, council, I'll open the public hearing. And we have attendees either with their raised hand feature on Zoom, which we see none at this time, no one in the audience. One more time, anyone on Zoom that would like to speak to the public hearing? This time I will close the public hearing and open the discussion for the council. Council discussion. Okay, no council discussion? Okay, then I would look for a resolution, council, to approve a resolution adopting a capital improvement plan and providing preliminary approval for the issuance of bonds thereunder.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Liefeld. Additional discussion, council? No additional discussion. Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. And that motion prevails. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your meeting.
And tonight, we also have a resolution for awards of contract for West 4th Street Water Tower Reconditioning. And with us, we have by Zoom, Ryan Stemsky. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. Yes, so tonight we are here to talk about the award recommendation for our West 4th Street Water Tower Reconditioning project. And just a reminder on this item, I've done this before, but reconditioning is a little more than just painting our towers. It includes that interior wet recoating, interior dry area recoating, structural improvements to the tower, exterior coating of the tower, obviously. And then just kind of a fun fact, we didn't currently have a mixer in the top of our tower. So this also includes an improvement, adding a mixer that we can control remotely with our SCADA system. The mixer is necessary to improve water quality in the tower. It also helps prevent icing that formulates this time of year up in the top of the tower and can cause some damage in the tower and whatnot. So some modern features, some nice structural improvements, et cetera, in addition to the pretty paint job that we all see at the end. On February 9th, the city did receive 5 bids on our project from contractors across the country. The low bid came from G&L Tank Sandblasting and Coatings. They're out of Shelbyville, Tennessee. So it shows you kind of the wide interest across country. That low bid did come in at $722,500, with the alternate bid coming in at $3,500. So extremely competitive bids. Just a reminder, the alternate bid is for the school district to add lettering on the side of the tower facing the high school. Specifically, it would state Home of the Raiders. That'd be a piece that they would pay for. And so tonight we're at that competitive price, recommending award of that in addition to the contract to allow the school to proceed with that lettering. The low bid, if you recall, our engineer's estimate was at $1.4 million. So when I say significantly low, you know what I'm talking about. We talked to some of the bidders and we kind of asked, why are we so low with the bids and whatnot? And I really think we hit one element, we hit the nail on the head when we positioned our tower after all the aggressive early season water tower reconditionings across the state. So we were one of the first in that later end of July, early August timeframe. And we're willing to take our water tower offline during that time to get these aggressive bids. So I think that played out really well. That's what the bidding market told us. In their busy schedules, there was a time slot And this project came in nicely to fill those time slots. So that was one reason. And then also, if the council recalls, we did determine this project as a unique project. It wasn't required to have prevailing wages on the project. So the competitive market also was able to determine the wages paid on these unique projects from these contractors across the country. So couple things that really work to our advantage in the bidding market. I can guarantee you I will not bring you bids this competitive in the future. So this one's a good one. The other piece on that low bid, I do want to comfort the council as well. Our consulting take engineer KLM did rigorously review the references. They reviewed the financial history, the project history of GNL, talked with several different states in which they performed work over the last couple of years, including Minnesota. The reviews were excellent. There's some folks that are rehiring GNL, which shows a lot there. Projects came in on time, on budget. KLM did spend a long conference call with GNL going over the scope of the work, making sure nothing was missed. All components were addressed in the specifications, and the contractor did meet all the pre-qualifications to bid on the project. So what that brings us to, one other thing with KLM, I did want to remind folks that we have hired their services for full-time inspection of the contractor's work. So that includes all welds on the structural components. It includes all coating thicknesses and types and processes of the project. So whenever the contractor is working, there will be a third-party inspector documenting all elements of the work. With all that, staff is recommending award in the amount of $726,000 to GNL Tank Sandblasting and Coatings. And with that, I'll stand for any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ryan. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ryan, the only thing I get a little nervous about with the bid, which is favorable for us, but how about change orders? Did this company get to see what we have and what product there is? Because we all know what's going to happen. If there's a change order, then we're making decisions to increase this back up. Granted, we have the budget for it, but who did KLM Engineering take? Will they take any of the responsibility of what is going to be shown that they were bidding on, or is it going to come back to the city with a bunch of change orders, or change orders not very common in water tower reconditioning?
Right. The level of detail and inclusion in the details, plans, and specifications that we hired KLM to prepare, I believe is thorough enough to cover all of the anticipated concerns. Keep in mind, before this plan preparation, a couple years ago, KLM did do a detailed 75-page inspection report. So we know what's up in that tower. We know the elements. We've got photos and documentation that built these plans and specifications. So it's not like they did it sort of blindly or templated. They built the specifications according to specific observations and inspections of our tower. And so, no, I don't believe that we will have many or any change orders. I think they've got the scope nailed down. And yes, it's fairly uncommon for a reconditioning project of this magnitude to have change orders. So that combined with KLM did sit down and go through the deliverables of the specifications with GNL. That would be the time for GNL to say, oh, we didn't know a mixer was included or whatnot. And that was not the case. They owned up and they supported the bid amounts as they provided and as associated with the specification. So through KLM's work, we're pretty confident that this will be delivered at that total base bid amount.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Fox?
Ryan, I appreciate hearing about the specific references and the specified scope conversation that KLM had with GNL. So thank you for sharing that, and I am happy to move the attached resolution to award the contract of the 4th Street Water Tower reconditioning.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Second by Councilmember Liefeld. Additional discussion, council. Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox? Yes. Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. And that motion prevails. Thank you again, Ryan.
Thank you.
Tonight, under community development, we have a resolution for a special use permit for auto repair Goebel at 2550 Millard Avenue, and we welcome back John Hinsman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm looking to see if my presentation will come back up, but try one more time here. As I'm speaking here, we've got a special use permit request before you, and let's see. All right. Okay, 2550 Millard Avenue, formerly Green Lawns Lawn Care here. Millard Avenue is this location, Veteran Park up here. Proposal is a special use permit to reuse the existing facility for an auto repair facility. Within the I-1 district, their auto repair facilities, along with retail facilities, are allowed via a special use permit. So no building construction, at least exterior presented, no site plan, just the use of the facility itself. Planning Commission did review this at their February 14th meeting, held a public hearing. There was no one that addressed it, and very little discussion by the Planning Commission and a recommendation for approval on this. So within your packet, there is a resolution with 5 conditions pertaining to the operation of the facility for your consideration. Just as a reminder, with special use permits, it is required that 6 of 7 council members vote affirmative to approve a special use permit. So I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John at this time, council? Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. John, I noticed number 5, it says there's no outdoor storage of inoperable, unlicensed, or damaged vehicles. It is a body shop, correct?
Right.
So anything they take in has to go inside.
Yep, they can't have unscreened materials that are out there. It says no outside storage of inoperable and licensed. So when we're looking at a situation in which you're in an automobile repair facility, they need to be actively working on it. There may be a situation in which they're outside and screened. There's a requirement for the screening to occur. But if they're unlicensed and inoperable over time, that would not be allowed.
Is the property screened now?
I believe it is. They would need to do that as part of any storage they'd have out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other questions, council? Okay, then I would accept a motion approving a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hastings granting special use permit approval to operate a retail and service facility within the I-1 Industrial Park zoning district. Councilmember Lund. And Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion, council. Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox? Yes. Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes, and that motion prevails. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Council members, do you have any announcements? I think Councilmember Fulch, did you?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Hi, I just wanted to give everyone a quick update from the Dakota Broadband Board. I'm the city's representative and the vice chair of the group this year. And so a few months ago, I had sent an email to the council to give them a heads up that the Dakota Broadband Board was going to be taking on a project. We're hiring a consultant to create a strategic plan for the group. And so that is moving forward, and a consultant has been brought on by the name of Design 9. And so what they're going to do is conduct business analysis of the current broadband environment within our entire county. And they're going to provide future recommendations on operations and policies for the Dakota Broadband Board to take on. And so a part of this work is actually conducting stakeholder interviews with various entities, throughout our county. And so that's going to be employers, healthcare, our school districts, the local government agencies, obviously. But what's really key here is that they would also like to identify those within the business community. Part of the work will be identifying opportunities to support economic development in the county as well. And so I'm asking you as our council members and members of the public, if anyone knows of good stakeholders that we should be involving in those interviews that will be conducted. I think they're probably going to be conducted via video conferencing to make it easy for folks to please let me know. And they're hoping that we provide names of folks who would be interested in participating later this week. And so if you have any ideas, please feel free to shoot me an email or send me a text message. I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. And I have a couple announcements. Congratulations to the Hastings Area of Commerce Award winners Intech Plastics, Katie Lindberg, Mike Johnson, Emily Bakeries and Deli, and Regina Hospital. And that event is this Thursday. Snowshoe guided hike on Sunday, February 27th at J.C. Park. Registration is required. Snowshoes, poles, and instruction will be provided. The event is free and offered in partnership with Dakota County Parks. Meetings coming forward are Wednesday, February 23rd. The Charter Commission meets at 7 p.m. Monday, February 28th, the Planning Commission meets at 7 p.m. Wednesday, March 1st, the Arts Task Force meets at 6 p.m. And Monday, March 7th, 5:30, City Council has a workshop with County Road 46, 47, and 7 p.m. we have a City Council meeting. At that point, if I could have a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Brox and Councilmember Lund. Clerk Murtaugh, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brox?
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch?
Yes.
Councilmember Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Yes?
Councilmember Lund?
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender?
Yes. And that motion prevails, and we are adjourned.